we focus on relationships more than transactions. We focus on advising and guiding instead of selling or any self-serving interest. We have to understand the needs and really the wants, because as I've said before, we're a want store, not a need store.
From the front lines of retail automotive, this is the Hooks Playbook. Welcome to Changing Lanes with Kip Hooks.
Welcome back to Changing Lanes, the Hooks Playbook. Yeah, this is the podcast where we explore the people and processes and perspectives shaping the automotive experience today, right out of the real-world experience of an actual dealer. That would be Kip Hooks. More on that in just a second. Today, we're diving into a topic that almost everyone can relate to: why car buying feels intimidating. For a lot of people, walking into a dealership comes with stress, uncertainty, and sometimes even a sense of pressure. But does it have to feel that way? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in this episode. We're going to unpack where those feelings come from. More importantly, how the right dealership approach can completely change that experience. Joining me today, as always, is Kip Hooks, the dealer principal, the top frog. He always brings this relationship-first mindset to everything he does, very much including the car buying, the car selling process. We're going to talk about how shifting from pressure to process and from transactions to relationships, which, by the way, Hooks Lincoln happens to be experts at, how that can make the car buying experience feel a whole lot more comfortable and really even enjoyable. So, Kip, are you ready to get into this?
I'm ready, Sean. Let's go.
Awesome. Well, the first thing that I want to ask is just the obvious. Why does car buying feel so intimidating for most people?
Well, Sean, most people only buy a car every few years, so they're not real familiar with the process. And that, you combine that with either past negative experiences or the stories they hear. It's not like there's a real good reputation, if you will, out there when a lot of people think about buying cars. And that's where, everything started with us, was like, why do most people get anxious or antsy and edgy when they have to buy a car? And so we looked at the emotional line, if you will, and like, how can we get rid of anything that's below the line? And, so when we looked at all those things of why people feel that way, and a lot of it's based on past experiences, a lot of it's based on their, the stories that they hear and just the overall rumors and all that. So, those are the things we have to overcome.
Yeah. I'm guessing, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this, like what negative experiences that customers will sometimes kind of bring with them.
Oh, we hear them all the time. I heard some this morning, as a matter of fact, talking about the way another dealer had done business with them. And I'm not going to throw shade. I'm not going to, none of that. But the stories are always there, whether they felt pressured into buying something, or if they were given an ultimatum, or if they weren't given incentives up front, which is insane, or any of that stuff, playing the back and forth, it's just always, if people are, if someone in the business is trying to confuse the person that they're trying to help get into a new car, they're not really looking out for their best interest. They're not much of an advocate. So, they come in with these stories about how it took forever, or, I felt like they were taking advantage of me. All these different stories, and it, that baggage doesn't go away. Those people carry it with them. And so that's something that we try to overcome, just based on doing it the right way, and doing it our way, the way that works for us. And we feel like that's the best way, because at the heart of what we do is relationships. And you don't take advantage of the people you're in a relationship with typically.
Yeah. I remember when I first met you and you told me about some of the things that you wanted to do when you had the opportunity to make the decisions.
Yeah.
And one of those things was exactly what you were talking about. Instead of feeling like you ended up having to be passed around to 2 or more people in a regular experience, you're like, no, 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 there's going to be one person,
Yeah.
And we've talked about it on the podcast. You consistently have those people called out by name based on what a fantastic experience they gave people. And you can clearly tell that that's tied to relationship building. So
I agree.
yeah.
I agree.
I
And those
love that.
things, those make me proud when we're following that vision that we had, and then we're getting the feedback from customers talking about, the people that go out of their way to say those very kind things. It just means the world.
Yeah. It's very hard, actually, to make people say those nice things about you. Most people are more encouraged to lean in on a review when they want to actually start a prairie fire, when they're upset, even if it's not really warranted. So when people are saying these wonderful things about you, that's earned. And you talk about that a lot. Well, I want to ask you a little bit about the traditional dealership model, because it certainly has kind of contributed to this feeling with the consumers. In what way do you think maybe that has happened?
Well, I mean, you talk about that old school model, and we talk about that, and we think about the back in the day where you hear the really bad stories, and hey, we evolve, business evolves, our culture evolves, everything gets better, and so it often back in those times, I guess it really felt like a win-lose. If one side won, the other side lost. And that's not the way we want to do business. It should be a win-win. If we help someone get what they came to get or what they want, then that's what we're going after. So, our model is more of a win-win versus the old, one side's going to win and the other side's going to lose, because it was just this back and forth, and don't get me wrong, it was the way it was then. I just don't think it doesn't go with today's culture. And then that's a good thing, because, we're 3+ generations of growing this business based on relationships and taking care of people. So being in a model like that just wouldn't work for anybody here, especially me, or especially our customers. But anyway.
Yeah, we talked about this recently. It was a comment actually that somebody dropped on one of these podcast episodes of Changing Lanes. And it was somebody who has bought multiple Navigators from you. I think that they were so specific that they said maybe they've bought 3 in the last 5 years. Yeah. And I don't know that they've met you yet personally. They're having this great experience that they would literally go on to your podcast and drop a comment. Man, you do it right, Kip. One of these days, maybe I'll run into you when I'm out there. That's the proof. And so when we record these episodes to help people kind of understand things that maybe they don't hear people like you, dealers, talk about, it's also backed up in the way that your community and the relationships you've built show up in the places where I don't think that a lot of dealers are probably looking, but it certainly is there. And you can't force somebody to go say something like that in the comments of a podcast unless you earned it.
You can't be forced, and it can't. That happens, naturally, and that happens as a result of someone here earning it. And when other people, it just really affirms to me that culture's there. When I'm getting comments like that, where this all happened, and the only piece I had in it is setting the tone and the vision and the direction for the dealership. Mm-hmm. And so that is super rewarding. And that's when high praise to every time that we get one of those, every person that gets a response like that. It's very high praise, because I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah. That's the goal. So you can't force that. That happens based on the way that you do business. Right. But customers do feel at times, not at Hooks, but they do feel out there in the car buying process forced into buying. I saw somebody just this week, Monday, posted about their mother had gone and bought a car when they were out of town, and it was not a great description, very much taken advantage of. And there was a lot of that forced into buying. Why do customers end up feeling forced to buy?
Well, I think it's it's probably going to be coming from someone who's self-serving, the high pressure tactics, the urgency in their language, like this is only good for today, or this is going away, or,
Right.
it's those kind of messages, that kind of interaction and that just leads to a poor experience typically. And, nobody wants to be put, especially with what we're dealing with. Nobody wants to feel like they're being pushed into doing something. Nobody's going to do what no one is going to be happy doing something they weren't drawn to doing themselves. And so even if somebody were to get through with something like that, I mean, that's a one-time thing. People are going to have buyer's remorse. And I tell people that all the time. I don't want you to, be throwing rocks at your car and darts at my picture every time you go to drive your car.
Right.
That's not what I want. We had a deal the other day. It's kind of the inverse of this. We had a customer who got a hold of me and was upset because the incentives changed. And she was taking her time to make a decision, and then made this decision on the evening of the last day of the month. And then the first day of the month, the incentives were different, better in some ways, but not really what she was looking to do. And she was upset about it. And so we were telling her, we don't use language. We don't want to feel like, we don't want to push you. We don't want to make you feel like, this is a right now thing. And she's like, well, if I would have known, I would have done this. There's no way we know. They keep a lot of those things to themselves. We don't know what they're going to announce the next day sometimes, especially when you're going over into a new month or, a new quarter. And so she was grateful on one hand that because she's bought multiple vehicles from us. And so she's grateful on one hand that we don't make her feel that way. And then on the flip side, she was like, well, I wish I'd have known. And I was like, well, we want to tell you everything we know, but we didn't know. And so, it's like, well, should we tell them that stuff? Well, we don't know those things. So there's nothing we did wrong. It was a circumstantial thing. And after I talked to her about saying, well, what if we'd have said, hey, we got to do it now. I'll do it now. Would you have liked that? She said, no, that's why I buy cars from you. I said, well, that's kind of where I am. So it's kind of a catch-22, but we're going to be sure you're taken care of. We're going to be sure we get the deal that's right for you. And we'll do all the, comparisons and analysis, and we'll present everything to you so you can make the right decision. But just because it's one thing that you were looking at's gone doesn't mean you're not going to get a better deal now. So, no, but even in situations like that, we're not going to change who we are. We're not going to change the way we do things because it will work out. And it doesn't have to work out right now. It's got to work out when it's right. So, so we're not going to we're not going to do that. Transparency is the key to what we do. We share all the information we have, but we're never going to push for somebody to do something right now if they're not ready. If they're ready, there are times when a customer's ready, they're ready, and they keep saying they're ready, but they just, pause and pause and pause. And sometimes you're like, hey, wouldn't you rather get this behind you? Like, what, I really would. And they move forward.
Yeah.
So,
that is actually a great example. And I can absolutely support the fact that incentives, being a guy in the car business that's been on the other side trying to sell things to guys like you. I worked for a couple of very big website providers for many, many years. And you want to know one of the things that was so frustrating is that the manufacturers, the OEMs, they would never give us some of them we'd have to go to a third party to get the most current incentives that were being dropped. And oftentimes we didn't have them once they were already live for the dealers to know what's going on and for those who are their customers. And maybe that's I don't know if that's a whole episode, but that's something that maybe we talk about in the future because that's out of your control. Yeah. But what you don't lose is capturing the control of the overall experience, making somebody comfortable with the fact that, hey, when these things happen, it doesn't change the ability still for us to make sure that this experience is still going to be great for you.
Right. That we get to control and do.
Yeah.
That's where we step in.
So let's talk about that a little bit. How does Hooks Lincoln, how do you guys create that more comfortable experience for the customer?
Well, because we focus on relationships more than transactions. We focus on advising and guiding instead of selling or any self-serving interest. We have to understand the needs and really the wants, because as I've said before, we're a want store, not a need store. But there are certain things within whatever they're getting, and it's whether it's sales or service. If they're buying a new car, getting their vehicle serviced, their needs need to be met, and they do have needs. They're here because they want to be here, but they have needs when they're here. So, you have a clear, understood, universal, if you will, process, a step-by-step process, but within that you have flexibility, where you have this latitude to work within this, but this is what you're trying to accomplish each step along the way. And it's always, you listen first, answer the question that's asked, and advise, and if you don't have the answer, find the answer. So it's all about, again, it's relationship based instead of transaction based.
From your perspective, what does a process driven versus a pressure driven experience look like or feel like?
Well, a process driven experience is more predictable. It's more transparent. It's paced around the customer because we set that stuff up. It's more proactive than it is reactive. You know what I mean? So it's if we're following this process that's focused on with the underlying intent of the experience versus a pressure driven approach is more rushed. It's more reactive. And then more than likely, if it's a reactive situation and that's when pressure starts coming in because of they don't know what the next step is, the uncertainty, the lack of clarity, and so it turns into hey, push. Let's find the end. If we find a shortcut, whatever we have to do. And that's when pressure comes in, and that's not the ideal way of doing it.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk a little bit about the financial weight. How does that impact customers?
Well, it's a huge purchase, right? It's, we always hear it's the second biggest purchase they'll make, second to a house, but there's also the fear of making the wrong decision or overpaying or leaving money on the table, as some say. And anything like that is going to naturally just start amping up the tension and the stress, the anxiety. Then those really are, I use noise and distract. I use noise, the word noise around here, that causes noise, whether you use noise or walls or whatever, it's getting in the way of building a relationship. And if it's getting in the way of that, then it's getting in the way of listening, answering what's asked, advising, the way that it needs to be advised with the customer's desires and the customer experience at the forefront of what we're doing. So, we try to do everything to kind of abate that tension, and nothing's cheap these days. I mean, it's a big purchase. So we want to be sure that we're being transparent. We're being educational. We're telling people what needs to happen and helping them make a decision.
Mm-hmm. And when you're doing that, what are some of the things that you do to try to help the customer feel maybe more confidence with the finance side of this equation?
Well, again, like I was saying, I mean, it comes down to, transparency and clarity, and just breaking down, here's the price, here's financing, here's your options, the trade values, everything that comes into the whole thing. This is what it is, and this is why and the education is there to explain why this is what it is. And so we just kind of, and we don't wait for things to come up. So, we try to address everything that's there. So there's no surprises for either side. So, you don't forget to say something and the customer says, well, what about that? And oh, yeah, sorry. It's like, here's what it is. We want to tell somebody, a customer, before they have to ask, so that they have everything they need to make the decision that they're here to make with confidence.
Yeah, that's the way I think everybody wants to buy cars. It certainly helps people feel a lot more comfortable in the process.
Yeah.
I feel like I already know the answer to this, but I love asking you because I know how much you like to talk about transparency because it's such a foundational part of what you do. But I'll ask again, like to you, like how important is transparency, especially in this particular conversation?
Well, it's everything. I mean, this is a sizable transaction. There's no denying that. And who is going to feel comfortable if they feel like one side is trying to hide the ball and trying to, get away with something? That's not, I mean, again, experience, relationships, that's the core of what we do. And transparency is imperative to achieving that. So the necessity of transparency in what we're doing when we're with our clients is imperative to the goal of the dealership, which is to build relationships and provide an excellent customer experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How are you going to get trust without it? Right.
It happen.
Yeah. And one of the things I love about conversations with you is because you articulate the things that are so important for the, not just any car buyer, but like all car buyers care about these things. And all dealers should care about them the way you do because you know the value of somebody over the lifetime of them buying vehicles, servicing vehicles. You don't want them once. You want them to have an experience with Hooks and have this transparency. And we're going to share all these insights and you're going to feel the culture of why we do it the way we do. And that's going to make somebody say, why would I want to go and buy or service a vehicle anywhere but Hooks?
Yeah.
That's
the heart of what we do. That's why we do it. Everything will work out if we're taking care of our customers. And so if we're building those relationships, and yes, we want them coming back over and over, but that's a sign of success. When we have repeat buyers who come back for their vehicles and for their service repeatedly, that's the sign of success. That's where you realize, hey, what we're doing is working. And because yes, they're coming back, but they're coming back. Why? They're coming back because they're happy. They're satisfied. They have a relationship with us and they're comfortable with us. So we've established the trust, the relationship, all those things that that are at the core of what we do. That's the underlying intention. Then we're succeeding there. So if we're providing that, then we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And so many things are out of our hands, but we believe that doing that is going to drive loyalty and build those relationships. And that's our goal, is to build those relationships and take care of more and more people. Mm-hmm. And I've said it over and over. How do you take care of one person the right way, whether it's when they're getting a new Lincoln or having their vehicle serviced? How do you do it right and do that over and over and over? Not how do you do this many in a day? How do you do this one and then repeat it throughout the day or through the month or whatever? So it's a perpetual kind of deal that's ever changing.
I love that philosophy. Can you share an example of relationship building changing the experience for the customer?
Oh, well, yeah, we have a lot of time. Yeah, of course. I mean, we have customers come in that are, nervous or worried about how long it's going to take, or, real guarded, and they leave saying that this was the best car buying experience they've had. And I say that humbly and modestly, but it's the team who are getting it done. It's all of us. We're all on the team, but It's not just one person, it's the entire team that gets it done. And so when I see that where it's like, oh, it's the best experience I've ever had, that's when you know that this vision, this intention of building relationships, and the relationship is over the transaction. That's when you know you're doing things right, and you're really, that culture is really set in, and we know that we're going in the right direction because we're taking care of our customers. And reviews are a reaction, they're a response. You earn your good or bad review before those words are ever thought of, let alone typed or said. So when they are, we know that we've done well. And if it's not, then we want to learn from it, make it right, and do better in the future. But whatever we do, whether it's good or bad, we're always looking to learn from it and get better from it.
Mm-hmm. We talked about this a little bit, but from your perspective, why do you think the dealer-customer relationship is so important long-term?
Well, because it's a cycle. I mean, it starts with, it could start with them getting a new Lincoln, or it could start in our service center, in whether it's customer service or a delivery of a new Lincoln. There's never an end to the process. There's never an end. It doesn't end when they drive away with their new Lincoln. It doesn't end when they get their vehicle taken care of in service. It's a perpetual thing. And it leads to, future relationship, whether it's a new purchase or a service during the ownership cycle or referral. And again, it all comes down to trust and consistency over time. It's just doing that for the right reason, which is our intention, is again, the relationships and taking care of that customer experience.
Yeah. Well, here's some advice that you can give to the audience. How would you advise customers when it comes to identifying a relationship-focused dealership like yours?
Well, again, like listen to everything we've been saying so far, but again, this seems repetitive. But are they being transparent? Are they being patient? Are they listening to you? Are they responding? Are they answering the questions you asked? Are they predicting some of the questions that you might ask? Is the conversation about what you want, or is it about what someone else wants? Because if it's a one-sided conversation, they're going to feel the difference pretty quickly, and they're going to know that, it's not going to feel right. If you feel like somebody's trying to get over on you, regardless of what they're buying, if it's a car or a refrigerator or, anything, if somebody feels like you're trying to get over on them, then most people are going to back away from that. But even if they don't back away, they're not going to have a good experience, and they may regret it down the road. But, I think those things, when you look at the character of the person that you're dealing with, and again, transparency, patience, listening, and grace goes a long way.
So the person who's nervous, maybe they're in market right now, and there's all kinds of conditions right now within the marketplace for a car shopper. What advice would you give someone who's in that process and they're nervous about buying that next car?
The first advice I would give them is come see us.
Mm-hmm.
But no, take your time, ask questions, talk to somebody who treats you like you're the important person. Like it's not just a transaction to them, that they're trying to listen and help you get what you want and help you establish or follow your path, not take you off. If you're here to get a new vehicle or a used vehicle or whatever it is, if you go down one road, I'm not saying you can't switch, but don't out of the gate say, well, I came to get this blah, blah, blah. No, I don't think you want that. We want to look at this. We got this over here. Well, that's not what I want. I mean, people always want a good deal, but you can't buy a price, right? If you can get the best price on this vehicle over here, that's, this god awful color that nobody has ever wanted in their lives. Well, is it worth paying a cheaper price for that? No, I don't want that. So it's not just the price. It's what you want. So be sure you're talking to somebody who's looking out for your wants, your needs, what's important to you, and helping you establish the goals that you set out to do, whether it's buying a car, getting service on a vehicle, or, just answering some general questions, and if it's not, if you say you're going to do it today or tomorrow rather, and they're trying to push you to do it today, why? That maybe there's a good reason why. I don't know, but it's so situational. But if the core of the conversation is about what's best for you as the client, then you're there. And that should be somebody who's wanting to build a relationship with you and listen. If you're not, then, and if you're not here, you come see me.
Yeah, absolutely. Go see you. That's a given, I think. I was so tempted to actually name some of the colors that I would absolutely no, that's no one's ever wanted that. I literally in my own neighborhood saw a car that was, hot, blazing, like neon pink, just this morning. And I know a lot of people love the color pink. That car you could see coming from miles away, and I guess if that's your thing, but I don't know. Have you ever sold a pink Lincoln?
I can't say that I recall that, but again, that's kind of why I didn't throw pink colors on it, because everybody's got something. It's not my car. It's
Right.
So if hey, sometimes that situation works out. We have this hot pink car over here that nobody's wanted to buy yet, and here's one that meets your price. Oh my God, I love pink, and it's a perfect situation. But they would have had to listen first, right? To know that, hey, does it work out that way? That works out one way, or it's like, well, I love pink. Oh my God, you love pink. This deal is going to work out perfect for you. I got this hot pink. So, again, it's those relationships, don't fall into a great situation. Do it intentionally.
When are you going to convince Lincoln to actually bring out a really deep, almost like a midnight purple?
We had this purple years ago, and as much as I love purple, I don't know if purple paint on a car is necessarily going to be a hot seller, especially purple inside. But I could go for a deep purple with a little metallic. If I could get an old, classic Lincoln, I would paint it a deep purple with some metallic in it. And then,
that'd be cool.
One of these days, maybe, but I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Yeah. Well, audience, as we wrap up today's episode, I think there's something pretty clear. Car buying doesn't have to be intimidating. It certainly isn't at Hooks Lincoln in Fort Worth, Texas. It's absolutely worth your drive. It's worth a flight, actually. You could call Kip and say, hey, I want to buy from you, and I'm going to fly in to do it. I seriously would tell you should absolutely explore that process, because who you do business with, it really does matter. And it will change the way you feel about car buying when you have somebody who is focusing on relationship and they care about that more than just the transaction. So when the process is transparent, as Kip has literally built into the fabric of how he does business, when the pressure is removed, when there's a genuine relationship between you and the dealership, everything changes. Kip, as always, I always appreciate this time. I appreciate you sharing your perspective, because you're a real one doing it every single day, and you're making this a better process for people, a more comfortable experience for your customers. Well, and they literally show up all over the place and write comments and reviews that back that up. They say it for you. You don't even have to say it, but I'm glad that you share. To the listeners, to the viewers, if you've ever felt overwhelmed by buying a car, hopefully this conversation gave you a new way to think about the process, maybe gave you another dealership that you could say, maybe I need to call them, get a conversation started that turns into a relationship down there. Certainly a lot of helpful stuff, a lot of good insights dropped by Kip today. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to subscribe to Changing Lanes on YouTube if you're there. Share it with somebody that needs to know this. Share it with somebody who's in the market for a vehicle. And stay tuned, because we'll be having more conversations just like this. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, everybody.